Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Fairfax County Democratic Committee 2021 House of Delegates Candidate Forum. My name is Brian Graham, and I'm the chair of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. We're excited to provide this opportunity for you to be able to hear from our candidates for the House of Delegates. We have 17 House of Delegates districts that touch Fairfax County, and six of those districts have challenges to the incumbent Democrats. So we're excited to have this opportunity. And really, I just going to hand it off to the chair of Fairfax County Democratic Committee's Veterans and Military Families Committee, Shamli Hoff.
Good evening. Welcome to our primary forum for the House of Delegates candidates. As Brian said, I'm Shamli Roy Hoff, chair of the Veterans and Military Families Committee for FCDC and the vice chair of outreach for the 100 Mill Democrats. I will be moderating the forum this evening. My role tonight is simply to ask the questions which have been vetted by the executive director of FCDC, call upon candidates in a pre-approved order, and ensure candidates stay within the time limits. I have not been in contact with any of the candidates regarding the forum. All candidates running in the Democratic primary representing parts of Fairfax County were invited to join us tonight, and all except Irene Shin running in the 86th accepted the invitation. All of the candidates have been informed of and have agreed to the format of the forum ahead of time. Everyone will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. I will then ask a question. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. If a candidate invokes their opponent's name, the opponent will be allowed 30 seconds for a rebuttal. The order of candidates answering questions will be rotated, so a different candidate will go first each time. I'll call the first candidate's name and announce who is on deck next. To help everyone stay on time, I will hold up this sign to show that you have 30 seconds left, this sign to show that you have 10 seconds, and this one to indicate that your time is up. I ask everyone to be respectful of the time limits. So we will begin with opening statements. And the opening statements will be done in the order of delegate district and alphabetical by last name. So we will begin with, Jennifer Adeli, and Kathleen Murphy is on deck.
Great, thank you so much, Shamli, and thank you so much to the Fairfax County Democratic Committee for hosting this great event, and to Shamli for moderating, of course. My name is Jennifer Adeli, and I am running for the Virginia House of Delegates in the 34th District. For those of you who are FCDC members, we may already know each other from my term as the Drainesville District Democratic Committee Chair and my work on the FCDC Steering Committee. But for those of you where we may be meeting each other for the very first time, in less than 2 minutes, I'm going to briefly share with you my professional and lived experience that makes me the right candidate for this position at this time. To begin, I have 25 years experience in government contracting after getting my MBA from Georgetown University. I started my career on Capitol Hill working for the late Congressman Matt Suey, and I got my MBA specifically with the mission to bring the best of business practices back to government. And I spent the next 2 decades doing exactly that. As a matter of fact, 10 years ago, I started my own successful firm working with other small businesses to bring their innovation to the federal government. So today, I'm running for the Virginia House of Delegates because as we move into the post-COVID world, and frankly, into the post-Trump world, we have a lot of work ahead of us. And our legislature needs more people like myself who have boots on the ground experience, not only in policy, but also in business and with progressive values alongside that. On a personal side, I have 2 children in Fairfax County Public Schools, and I'm happily married for 18 years. My husband Hamid came to this country at 12 years old, fleeing the Iranian Revolution. So our kitchen table conversations overlap with so many immigrant families face, and many of you know too well. This is very brief. I look forward to a great discussion this evening about the things that matter most to Virginia and the 34th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer Adeli. Next is Kathleen Murphy, and Mary Barthelson is on deck.
Start. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I am the delegate in the 34th District and have been for 7 years, and I am running for re-election. With your help, you can remember how hard it was to turn the 34th District from red to blue, and I am very proud of my record of accomplishments as a delegate. I am vice chair of the Democratic Caucus, and I'm especially proud of what we've been able to accomplish in the majority as we have reoriented our priorities and enacted important measures to advance social justice, protect our environment, and to promote gun safety. I've been a leader in the House of Delegates on gun safety issues. I started the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus and led the Safe Virginia Initiative with Speaker Fillercorn. I have also stood with our veterans, especially women veterans who are so underserved, to make sure they get the benefits that they deserve. I started the Rare Disease Caucus because we have a daughter who has a rare disease, and we successfully passed legislation to ensure medical coverage for these debilitating diseases. I'm a member of the Renewable Energy Caucus, which is led by my dear friend and terrific delegate, Alfonso Lopez, and we have focused on measures to protect our environment. I work with our business community to ensure that Virginia is business friendly so we can generate the tax revenues we need to support education and transportation and other programs. I am a strong supporter of our unions and have gotten their endorsement, their overwhelming endorsement in every election. Our work isn't done, and 2 years in the majority does not ensure a permanent majority. We must keep the majority or Republicans will undo all the good that we have done. For me, this is a full-time job. I'm a proven leader in advancing our democratic values, and I ask you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Murphy. Next, we have Mary Barthelson, and on deck is Delegate Ken Plum.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Barthelson. I'm running to be District 36's data-driven legislator. I'm a Northern Virginia lifer. I grew up in Fairfax, Virginia before moving out to Haymarket to go to Battlefield High School to attend their STEM program. After that, I moved back to Fairfax to go to George Mason, where I got my bachelor's and master's degree in systems engineering. I'm a new face for many of you, but I've been around working for our community quietly as a robotics team mentor, advising on STEM education programs. And last year, I volunteered to be a PPE distributor during the pandemic. So I imported around 13,000 masks, which went to our COVID testing stations, our ICU doctors, and our essential workers, and around 10,000 of those were donations. I was inspired to run after seeing a lot of the challenges that our country has faced the last few years as a result of technology and laws not being kept up to date for modern challenges. So I think it's very important to have legislators there that understand the bills that we're passing so that we can keep moving forward in areas like green technology, criminal justice reform, data privacy, and every other area, because technology is becoming more and more integrated with our everyday life. And we really need legislators that understand those bills in order to explain the technical pieces between the legislators as well as the general public. So I think that's what I'm bringing to the table with my background. That's new. I would definitely say that I'm as blue as the incumbent is. We share progressive values, but I'm coming in with more knowledge on technology and an interest in academia as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mary Barthelson. And next we have Delegate Ken Plum. Holly Hazard is on deck.
Thank you, Shamali, and thanks also to the Fairfax County Democratic Committee for providing this forum. I'm Delegate Ken Plum, representing the 36th District. I've been there for quite a while, as most of you know, and that being there has given me the seniority to get into positions where I can affect the outcome of legislation. I chair, for example, the Committee on Agriculture, Chesapeake and natural resources. This year, for example, we passed through the bill on electric vehicles in that committee. We did a lot of good work on Chesapeake Bay, but I'm going to leave that for my vice chair, Alfonso Lopez, to talk about. I'm also on the Appropriations Committee. I'm the third ranking member of the Appropriations Committee. And of course, that's all about budgeting and how we can provide more money for our schools and our colleges and universities. I'm on the Public Safety Committee, and I'll tell you, I think the reason I'm on the Public Safety Committee is because I'm brave enough to vote for all the gun safety bills. We passed a slew of those bills this legislative session to bring into focus the need to prevent gun violence, and I'm very proud of the work we've been able to do there. I'm also on the Communications, Innovation and Technology Committee. I was the first chairman of the Committee on Technology and Science in the House of Delegates, and that committee has evolved now into the Communications, Innovation and Technology. We met this afternoon, for example, virtually, and we took a look at matters like drone delivery. We also heard a report from the Virginia Academy of Science, who works with us in cooperation looking at sea level rise. I also chair the Joint Legislative Audit Review Commission, JLARC as it's known. It's kind of the GAO of the legislature. And we do important work from getting ready to legalize marijuana to figuring out a better way to fund our schools so that there's a more equitable funding. And I also then serve on the Joint Commission on Technology and Science, which came about as a result of my legislation. Glad to be with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Delegate Plum. Next, we'll have Holly Hazard with Delegate Kay Corey on deck.
Thank you so much, Shamali, and also to FCDC for setting up this forum where we can talk about our ideas. I am a community leader and an activist you can count on to show up, to lead, and to get results. I've spent my life as a social justice attorney advocating for some of the most vulnerable in our society, animals, kids, and women. And I didn't just show up. I'm a leader in the fight to transform the way that we think about animals, our relationship with them, and our expectations for humane treatment. I've been a part of transformational change, from leading the fight to stop animal testing. That jumping bunny logo that you've got on your cosmetics or your household products is mine, to researching and implementing programs to contracept thousands of wild horses, not slaughter them, to educating people on the cruelty of veal and pate, tail docking, and factory farming. Reducing the euthanasia of healthy pets in this country from 15 million when I started my work to under 300,000. And where everyone used to brag about their AKC purebred, we now only talk about our rescues. And I bet that many of you are sitting right there next to you right now. I was a leader in these fights. And here in Virginia, I fought for better schools, the environment, women's rights, and the ERA. And I want to take my 30 years of experience in social justice to Richmond to apply the same strategies that I learned as a leader to the problems Virginia faced, from education to unions to climate change to equity and justice. You don't need to be against anyone to be for me. Our legislature has benefited greatly, not just from the shift from Republicans to Democrats, so that's been seismic, but from the fresh breeze of new perspectives. We have a Black woman on the Senate floor explaining her mother's experiences with inequity in maternal health care. We have a trans woman speaking out in support of trans students, a nurse, and we even have an electronics repairman. Different lives, skills, and experiences enriching the General Assembly and therefore Virginia. I have the skills, the perspective, and the passion from 30 years of making transformational change to be an asset to my district and for the Commonwealth, and I ask for your support.
Thank you very much, Holly. Next is Delegate Kay Corey with Delegate Mark Levine on deck.
Thank you. Hello, good evening, everyone. I appreciate this opportunity for us to debate tonight and present our views and our experience. I'm Kay Corey, the delegate from the 38th District. I am running for re-election based on my experience and expertise that I have developed over the past 11 years. I know that I can build effectively on the accomplishments of the Democratic majority. In the last 2 years, the Democratic majority has made astounding strides. We had a very ambitious agenda. We were not able to enact it all. However, we did enact legislation that is revolutionary in Virginia. We passed the ERA. We repealed the death penalty. We restored women's reproductive rights. We shored up voting rights. We invested in an historical way in public education. And I could go on, but I won't. I'm in the leadership in the Democratic Caucus. I am the chair of Cities, Counties, and Towns, the first woman to chair that committee. I am also on the Disability Commission, and the chair of the Women's Healthcare Caucus, which I founded 10 years ago. However, all of these positions only come with leadership and persistence. I have the position now to fight for the 38th district, to bring the values that the 38th district has always had and that I have always represented to Richmond. I will not hit the ground running. I am running, I have been running, and I will continue to run to get to where we have to go to have equitable legislation in Virginia.
Thank you very much, Delegate Corey. Next, we have Delegate Mark Levine with Elizabeth Bennett Parker on deck.
Thank you so much for hosting us. Hello, Fairfax Democrats. I do know many of you. I hope you've had a chance to meet me over the 6 years. I've been proud to represent the 45th District. I represent Alexandria, Arlington, and Fairfax. And although we only have a couple of districts, a couple of precincts in Fairfax, I think the people of Bellevue and Huntington would tell you they've been well served. We've had great constituent service, really helping out folks in a tough time during this pandemic, whether it's vaccines or testing or making sure that people get the medical treatment or unemployment aid they need. As I said, I'm in my 6th year, and I'm also, if you don't live in my district, and I suspect most of you don't, I hope you listen to my answers tonight because I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. And if you like my answers, well, the same work I've done as delegate, I can do as Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, running to be Virginia's first full-time Lieutenant Governor. So I hope you'll listen to your delegate, your race, and some of what I have to say as well. I've had a very progressive record in the Virginia House of Delegates, the second most progressive actually of all the delegates. And I introduce a lot of bills. I'm pretty active. In fact, I introduced 47 bills last year before we had a limit and passed about half of them into law. I am on 4 committees, like I said, pretty active. The Privileges and Elections Committee, Courts of Justice, Public Safety, Health, Welfare, and Institutions. I am the subcommittee chair of 2 very important committees. One is Public Safety, which deals with police reform. I think police reform has very much been the issue in the news this year, and I think we've done pretty good work. We can do more. And also the Constitutional Amendments Subcommittee. 2 great constitutional amendments came out of my subcommittee this year. One is a marriage equality amendment, and the other restores the right to vote for people who've served their time. I'm most proud of many things. I don't have much time, but I chair the Virginia Transparency Caucus. I'm the reason why we now have every committee and subcommittee live streamed and archived. And I've always stood up for gun violence protection, including taking some really difficult stands on bills because we need to protect us from guns. And I'm afraid my time's up, but we'll be talking more.
Thank you very much, Delegate Levine. Next, we have Elizabeth, let's see, did I do this right? Yes, Elizabeth Bennett Parker. We have Delegate Alfonso Lopez on deck.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Bennett Parker. I serve as the Vice Mayor of Alexandria, and I also serve our region as the chair of the Virginia Railway Express, one of the largest commuter rail systems in the country, as well as on the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission and Regional Commission. Both of my parents were in the Navy and instilled in me a sense of service to our community and our country. In particular, my mom would always tell me, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I've applied that to my entire career. I started a small business to fight food waste, both the negative environmental effects, as well as the fact that we waste food while members of our community are hungry. I merged that with the nonprofit Together We Bake, which I now co-lead, where we provide job training and other support to women returning from the criminal justice system, women experiencing homelessness, women who've recently immigrated, and women surviving abuse. In turn, that experience inspired me to run for the Alexandria City Council in order to step up and address the challenges that I saw many of our women facing more directly. I'm proud of the work that I've been able to do as Vice Mayor, which includes expanding access to early childhood education, increasing the supply of affordable housing, enhancing outreach to residents regarding SNAP or food stamps, declaring a climate emergency, and taking concrete actions to cut our emissions because we need to do more to fight climate change and its impacts. In just the past month, we passed a strong independent community police review board, and I worked with labor groups and led our efforts to pass a collective bargaining ordinance that is strong and fair for our workers. I also introduced a budget amendment that added an additional $1 million for affordable housing, continued our work to reduce emissions, and eliminated overdue library fines, which the American Library Association has declared a social equity issue. That amendment passed unanimously last evening. And this kind of collaborative, results-driven leadership is why I've been endorsed by State Senator Adam Ebbin, Mount Vernon Supervisor Dan Stork, two former delegates who've held this seat, Marion Van Lanningham and Rob Krupika, as well as other current and former elected officials. I'm honored to have their support, and I hope to earn yours as we work together to build back better after COVID. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth Bennett Parker. And then now we have Delegate Alfonso Lopez and Karishma Mehta is on deck.
Growing up in Fairfax, my mom dedicated her life as a high school counselor to helping immigrant kids go to college. My dad came to the United States as an undocumented 19-year-old with $270 in his pocket and the dream of a better life. They each worked 2-3 jobs at a time to provide for us, but with the help of government programs, they got an education, bought a home, and achieved their dreams. They instilled in me the values of hard work and public service that drive me every day. As your delegate, I've been a champion for our values in Richmond, fighting to make Virginia a place where we lift everyone up and leave no one behind. Over the last 10 years, I've been the patron, co-patron, or the chief co-patron of over 150 bills signed into law, addressing everything from the environment and renewable energy to small businesses to protecting immigrants and sensible gun violence prevention legislation. I'm especially proud of my bills that created in-state tuition for Dreamers, brought back project labor agreements, dedicated $800 million to help revitalize the Chesapeake Bay, helped close the Charleston gun sale loophole with Ken Plum and Kathleen Murphy, and my bill that created the Virginia Affordable Housing Trust Fund that served as the backstop for eviction prevention during the COVID-19 pandemic and provided housing for thousands of families. And as the House Majority Whip, I'm honored to have, among other things, increased teacher salaries by 5% starting in July, secured a dedicated source of revenue for Metro, worked to close the school-to-prison pipeline, banned the death penalty, legalized marijuana use for adults, created the first state Voting Rights Act in the South, and perhaps most importantly, expanded Medicaid and healthcare protections to 500,000 Virginia families, including 45,000 folks in our region. Going forward, we must focus on jobs and the economy, education, and the needs of working families. We need to create more prosperity and do it in a way where everybody wins. We need to invest in our infrastructure and in our workforce, and most of all, in our children. I pledge to continue fighting for better schools, transportation solutions, environmental safeguards, economic development, criminal justice reform, and our values of embracing diversity, tolerance, and compassion. Thank you for being here. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much, Delegate Lopez. Next, we have Karishma Mehta, and Delegate Ibrahim Samara is on deck.
Thank you so much, Shamali. Good evening, everyone. Hello, Fairfax Democrats. My name is Karishma Mehta. I'm a preschool teacher running to represent the 49th District in the House of Delegates. Should I become delegate, I would have the honor of serving Seven Corners and Bailey's Crossroads in Fairfax County. My story is the story of so many people across the 49th District and in Virginia. My parents came here from India seeking a better life, and they struggled with rent, school lunch debt, and a lack of healthcare, all without the protection of a union. After I graduated from college, I inherited these struggles. I worked long hours at jobs that paid starvation wages just to pay down student debt. And when I became a teacher, I had to skip meals and avoid the doctor to fund my own classroom while watching my students and their families struggle with the same obstacles that I grew up with. That's the reason I decided to run, to break the cycle of inequity for my students. These inequities are on display right here in our district. While developers sell us out and build more luxury housing, 20% of people in Seven Corners live at or below the poverty line. At the same time, only 6% of Latinx kids in Seven Corners go on to higher education compared to 75% of our white children. We need legislation that will address these issues in a universal way, not one that still leaves out and exploits working class families in our economic system. That's why I strongly support Delegate Samira's bill to bring single payer to the state level. I strongly support a homes guarantee and a Green New Deal that protects our Black and Brown communities from environmental injustice by the fossil fuel industry. As a preschool teacher, I work year-round in the classroom, and as a delegate, my commitment is to work year-round for this district, not just when I'm asking for your vote. Our elected officials are often lobbyists, attorneys, or those well connected to power. I believe that District 49 finally deserves a delegate that's connected to the people. Thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to answering your questions and earning your vote.
Thank you very much, Karishma Mehta. And last but not least, Delegate Ibrahim Samira.
Thank you, Shamli, and thank you so much for having this forum, FCDC. I've been working hard in the House for all of us in the 86th District and beyond in Northern Virginia and all across Virginia to effectively deliver quality, affordable housing for all, secure healthcare as a human right, and to have a healthy democracy at our core. Since securing our majority in 2019, I've been busy with my colleagues, focusing on abolishing the death penalty, legalizing marijuana, expanding access to healthcare, instituting common sense gun safety laws, strengthening environmental protections, and improving voter rights for all Virginians just like you. But there's still so much work to be done. As a doctor, I see every day my patients being forced to choose between affording their rent, their mortgage, and paying for their medical services that they desperately need during this pandemic. As the youngest elected in the Virginia General Assembly at the age of 29 currently, and for the last 3 years, and hopefully for a little fewer years to come, I'm the first generation Muslim Afro-Arab American. I know how important it is that we have representation and how important it is to stay true to our morals and values in the course of representation. In 2019, I directly confronted Trump on the 400th anniversary of Virginia's democracy in Jamestown when he came to promote his hateful agenda. And now I want to continue to stand up for us in the House of Delegates. I'm counting on your vote on June 8th. There's so much more to be done. We're talking about things that we have not gotten to. Just like you got your vaccine for free, you should be able to get healthcare for free. Healthcare should be a human right. This should not be a question. I'm dedicated to making sure that we get there, dedicated to reforming our zoning laws so that we can actually get down to resolving the shortage of housing. 174,000 units short of housing, affordable quality housing in Northern Virginia that is causing many people to suffer and many people to be displaced. And my commitment to you is I don't take a single dollar from corporations. That's why I listen to everyday people every single day in my decision making. And that's why I don't listen too much to big corporation lobbyists and how they get us at decision making processes. And I'm going to continue fighting for that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Delegate Samira. I appreciate that everyone has been working hard to stay on time. That's going to make this run really great. So the first question that I'll ask, the first speaker will be Kathleen Murphy, and Delegate Kathleen Murphy and Jennifer Adeli will be on deck. With Democrats running in 99 out of 100 seats across Virginia this year, Virginians are more engaged in politics than ever before. So at this time in Virginia, why are you running for office? What makes you uniquely suited to be our leader for the next 2 years? And it's Delegate Kathleen Murphy.
Thanks. I've been the delegate now for 7 years, and I am committed 100% to working full time for the people in this community. I have the time, I have the experience, and I know the issues inside and out. I have been involved in government, I think almost for my whole life. So for me, this is like second nature. I am at a place in my life where I can afford to do this full time. My children are grown, and I stay out in the community. I stay involved in the issues. I meet with the transportation committees and I work on the issues that are so important, especially transportation and the widening of 495 and the American Legion Bridge. These are all things that I have been involved with for many, many years. And so I know them well, and I have the capacity and the time to dedicate my full efforts to all of these issues.
Great. Thank you very much. Jennifer Adeli. And Ken Plum will be on, Delegate Ken Plum is on deck, I'm sorry.
No, sorry about that, Shamli. So the question, 99 out of 100 seats running, we have Democrats running in, and you mentioned how engaged everybody is, and you're absolutely right. This is the ideal time to run. This is that engagement is the reason why we have so many primaries this year, because we learned Looking back at 2016, so many Democrats learned that we had, let's be honest, taken our eye off the ball a little bit. A lot of people became engaged. Voter turnout went through the roof. We started bringing progressive values to legislation. I am running. Why am I uniquely situated to be this leader in this seat for the next 2 years? I have a diverse background. And yes, I do think this job should be full-time. As a matter of fact, I advocate that our legislature should be expanded beyond that 30 or 45 days that we have in the Constitution. So I am ready to bring my diverse background to this seat and looking forward to change where we're going based off of that energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next we have Delegate Ken Plum, and Mary Barthelson is on deck.
Well, thank you for the question. I didn't get that question back in the hard years when Democrats were in the minority. The times when I had to stand up, for example, on the death penalty and be outvoted 99-1. I'm persistent. I work hard, and I'm not willing to give up. Now the years are good. 2021 sessions, the 2020 and 2021 sessions were revolutionary in Virginia, the most transformative period of time we've ever had in Virginia's history. Times are good now. And I want to continue to work on bills that I've worked on for decades. I know the bills inside and out. I know the issues. I worked time and a half at being a delegate now that I'm retired. And I look forward to having your input to continue to turn those into meaningful legislation. I have meaningful roles in the legislature, and I can use those roles to move our progressive values forward.
Thank you very much, Delegate Ken Plum. Next is Mary Barthelson.
Yes.
With Delegate Kay Corey is on deck.
Thank you. Can you see my camera?
Yes.
So last year I was boots on the ground during the pandemic, making sure our essential workers and our doctors were taken care of, making sure that they were protected. And that really inspired me to run because I want to make sure that I'm in a position where I can keep taking care of our community. And I'm going to be bringing that same dedication to House Delegate to continue protecting and fighting for my community.
Thank you very much. So next is Delegate Kay Corey with Holly Hazard on deck.
Thank you. I already spoke about some of the reasons why I should be reelected, and that is to build on what we started in the past 2 years. However, I would like to let you know that right now I am endorsed by the Sierra Club and Emily's List. I've also been named a champion of justice by the Interfaith Power and Life, and a champion of sustainability by the Faith Action Coalition for Climate Solutions. These endorsements are based on past accomplishments, not on future aspirational ideas. We all have progressive ideas. The point is, who can get what done? I am, as I said before, in the leadership in the Democratic Caucus, and I have the opportunity to stand up for the 38th district and be sure all our voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Corey. Holly Hazard with Elizabeth Bennett Parker on deck.
Thank you so much. In this very blue district that I'm lucky enough to live in, we need leaders who can be out front on issues, the progressive issues, because the Democrats who are out on the spine of I-81 or in areas that are more purple cannot speak out on some of the issues that are pushing the envelope. We need to have a delegate who's going to strongly support repealing the right to work and supporting collective bargaining, reducing standardized tests for kids at the lower grade levels. And I just found out that the legislature last year actually tripled the number of standardized tests for students in the 3rd through the 8th grade. So we now have third graders who are going to be taking 3 tests each year instead of one standardized tests, getting rid of solitary confinement, making college more affordable, and certainly getting our $2 billion back from Dominion Energy and putting it into clean energy. We need someone also who wants to reach out to those blue rural voters and begin building up our base out in other parts of the Commonwealth. I'm that kind of a passionate, energized leader, and I would like to have your vote.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Bennett Parker is next with Delegate Mark Levine on deck.
Thank you. I am running because I have unique experience and perspective to bring to Richmond, given my background as a nonprofit leader, small business creator, and as a local elected official. And that there are actually only 18 delegates serving currently with city or county government experience, and none of them are from Northern Virginia. Obviously, we face some different issues here than in other parts of the Commonwealth. And that's a really important perspective to have, given the role that local government plays in people's lives, and that local authority in Virginia is limited to what we are allowed to do by Richmond. And that has wide-ranging implications from some really small issues to some really big ones. I'm also a nonprofit leader working directly with women returning from the criminal justice system. The General Assembly has made some really significant steps forward towards reform, but we know that we have a lot more work to do, like abolishing mandatory minimums, providing pay parity to public defenders, and more. Additionally, as a small business creator, I understand the pressures of being a small business owner. And as we look to build back better after COVID, we need to make sure we're supporting small businesses and all of those who have been disproportionately impacted by COVID.
Thank you very much. Delegate Mark Levine is next, and Karishma Mehta is on deck.
Thank you. I think if you want a candidate who gets something done, you need 2 things. You need to have the passion of someone who's fought really hard all their lives and frankly been an outsider. And you need the talents and techniques and knowledge of an insider. I compare it to, you need gas to fuel the car, you need someone driving the car. Some of you know I spent 25 years as an activist before I ever entered the House of Delegates, fighting on really important and difficult issues like getting justice for my family, fighting the issues of domestic violence, bringing about marriage equality, worked very, very hard, was an early supporter of that. And then in the House of Delegates, as I said, I have a very, very long legislative record that I don't have time to explain here, but I've even done transformative things like not just the Transparency Caucus, but Mark's monthly meetups, meeting every single month with my constituents, something I hope to continue to do as Lieutenant Governor with all of Virginia, to provide that transparency to folks on a wide range of issues. You need someone with the passion of someone who's been left out, but also the knowledge of someone who knows how to get it done.
Thank you very much. Karishma Mehta is next with Delegate Alfonso Lopez on deck.
Thank you so much for that question. After almost a decade of being Delegate Lopez's constituent, I know and my neighbors know that it's time for change in this district. As a preschool teacher, I'm still struggling to pay off student loan debt and provide for my family. Similar stories are heard across the district from people that I've talked to who are starting a family or still renting and trying to keep a roof over their heads. It's unacceptable that corporate developers have driven up costs so much in this district and displaced the working class people that live here. That's why I'm fighting for a housing guarantee, for universal health care, and preschool for all. It's not enough to call yourself progressive. We have to be able to take on the greed and corruption that's been the Virginia way. Time and time again, my opponent has sold out our district to the highest bidder. And when I'm elected, we will finally have representation for working people by a working person, not someone who's lobbied for ICE detention facilities. I'm not a politician or a lobbyist. I'm a working class preschool teacher with a movement powering my campaign, not corporate donors.
Thank you very much. Delegate Alfonso Lopez with Ibrahim Samira on deck.
Thank you. Will I be able to respond to the 3 times I was called out in that falsely in that last?
I did say that if your name is called, you get an additional 30 seconds to rebut. So if you would like to do the rebuttal first and then respond to the question, that's up to you, but I'll give you a minute and a half.
Thank you. There's been a lot of misinformation going around. First off, there's been a lot of misinformation going around about this. During the Obama administration, my old consulting firm was contracted by Farm Bill. I was brought in to try and help improve overall conditions for people stuck in a horrible situation. I want to be clear. The Trump administration's ICE detention and zero tolerance policies were an aberration. They were terrible. My entire life, including my life in public service, has been fighting to help new Americans and immigrants regardless of status. This is my family and my community we're talking about. My father came to the United States as an undocumented immigrant at the age of 19. I'm incredibly proud of all the work I've done in the General Assembly to help new Americans and immigrants, from passing legislation protecting immigrants from fraud, to expanding access to Medicaid for immigrants, mothers, and children, to passing the DREAM Act agenda, to passing the de-ICE bill in response to the Trump administration's malicious and racist zero tolerance policy on immigration. And every year I'm one of the leads on the floor against divisive, ugly, and wrong-headed legislation that would demonize new Americans and immigrants, from 287G to anti-sanctuary city bills to the anti-DREAM Act. And I will continue to show the Republicans that ugly Trump-style anti-immigrant policies are not welcome in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So moving on to my response. I love my community. The 49th district is arguably the most diverse one in Virginia. My family's experience and the experiences of my father as an undocumented immigrant give me a unique sense of purpose and motivates me to fight for my community. I see my father in every dreamer or DACA student striving to get an education and create a better life for themselves. I see my family in the struggles of folks in the community working tirelessly to provide for themselves and their children. I believe my extensive public policy and legislative transaction experience at the highest levels of state and federal government makes me uniquely qualified to serve and deliver for the people of 49th District. I would say that my work in the Clinton White House, the Obama White House,
Delegate,
working as the head of Congressional and Federal Affairs, and the fact that I was the last thing, ma'am, I was able to pass every single one of my bills last year and have them enacted into law. Thank you. Makes me an effective legislator for people.
Thank you very much. Delegate Ibrahim Samira.
Yes, the biggest things that I think are required of a legislator that is to be effective in the interest of people is to be away from the influences of a lot of big corporations that their bottom line is money. When legislators, when I look at money from paying contributions from big companies, I'm thinking to myself, what do they want out of this? Do they want me to be corrupt, and do they want me to be standing by their bottom line, their profit interest in legislation, or do they want me standing by my people? And so that is, to me, a core criteria for myself to be a good legislator, and that's why I think I could be a great legislator for my constituents, because I'm always going to be looking after them. Furthermore, as a doctor who knows a lot about healthcare and a lot about how private insurance works, about how pharmaceuticals works, about how hospitals work, I know that they're making a lot of money off people's backs. And I'm trying to prevent them from doing that. And I know how to get us to a single payer healthcare system, which is in line with every other industrialized nation of the world, to make sure that we have a public health option that is at Medicare rates that competes with private insurance rates. That is how we get out of a future pandemic. That is how we have a healthy economy for many years to come. And that is how we fight for equity and inclusion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So question number 2, we're going to start in reverse order. So Delegate Ibrahim Samira will be the first to speak, and Karishma Mehta will be on deck. The question is this: COVID-19 highlighted inequities in our society. How has the COVID-19 crisis affected your district? What will you do to help prevent similar problems in the future?
Having experience as an activist and organizer before I ran for office, I immediately noticed that we need to think about the most disenfranchised people in my district. Brown and Black people in my district are suffering right away when the pandemic started. My district had 2 of the top 10 zip codes in the entire state, 20171 and 20170 for COVID infection. And I immediately went to work. The first thing that I did was make sure that we set up food banks, because people are looking for resources to live their day-to-day life. Once we set up those food banks, I started thinking about how do we get the masks out there? How do we get the resources out there that they need? Unemployment insurance, Medicaid, food stamps, whatever, you name it. Everything was there in the same spot. And that's how we got my 2 top 10 zip codes in my district out of the top 10 and in the lower ranks. We need to make sure that everybody has healthcare as a human right so that we can prevent this from ever happening again, because people don't need to be choosing between food and their healthcare. And that's how you keep equity and inclusion in your mind when you're thinking about fighting against this pandemic and future pandemics. Thank you, Shamli.
Thank you very much. Next is Karishma Mehta with Delegate Alfonso Lopez on deck.
Thank you so much for this question. Every time I'm in the district talking to voters, the #1 issue during this pandemic is healthcare. During this pandemic, I was personally displaced and was unable to afford healthcare for myself or my family. In this pandemic and across his career, Delegate Lopez has taken thousands from private healthcare companies, including Anthem, CareFirst Blue Cross, and Cigna. These favors that private health insurance companies are doing are another way to control our healthcare system. I want to expand healthcare so that if you live in Virginia, no matter who you are and how much money you have, you're able to see a doctor. If we want to prevent the next crisis from completely decimating our communities, we need to be fighting for healthcare as a human right and a universal single-payer system, which is something that my opponent does not support. I will always fight to expand healthcare and never take a penny from those health insurance companies that are preventing our people from receiving the healthcare they need.
Madam Moderator, may I
Yes.
respond again to the third?
Yes, and this time what I will do is I will just give you that 30 seconds first, and then I will give you the minute to respond to the question. Would that be okay?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Healthcare should be a human right. I have never voted against Medicaid for all. I have supported Medicaid for all. I support universal healthcare, and the fact is that we have accomplished that in the work we've done in the House of Delegates. I defy anyone to find a single vote where I have not been on the side of the angels on this issue. In terms of the answer to the question, I'm very proud of the fact that my legislation, HB 2124, made sure that emergency COVID-19 care for undocumented and low-income Virginians was passed this year, so that no one would go without a vaccination, treatment, or testing because of their undocumented status or their inability to pay. I'm very proud of the fact we were able to get that done. If we learned anything from this COVID-19 pandemic, it's that our social safety net is fragile, and that if kids were going to school, they weren't eating. If you had housing instability or food instability if you were not working. And so what I was very proud of was the work we did over the summer and this year to reinvigorate the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, use it as a backstop for rental and mortgage assistance. And the facts are wonderful. In 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, we had fewer people actually evicted than in 2019. Also, Latinos make up 9.4% of the population of Virginia, but accounted for 31% of the COVID-19 cases. To say that I've been working diligently to make sure that that was addressed is an understatement.
Thank you very much. And next is Elizabeth Bennett Parker with Delegate Mark Levine on deck.
Thank you. I think as everyone has acknowledged, obviously COVID has had a disproportionate effect on our Black and Brown neighbors, as well as our small businesses. I think we immediately responded in a number of ways that I don't know I can get through all of them in 1 minute, but we partnered with Neighborhood Health to do first testing and now vaccines in communities that had been disproportionately impacted. We're prioritizing vaccines in certain census tracts. We worked to provide hotel rooms for folks who were who were exposed to the virus and didn't want to expose their family members. We provided food, rental assistance, eviction assistance. I personally became a Medical Reserve Corps volunteer and was working at testing sites, delivering supplies to COVID positive residents. And I also actually, in working at some of the food distribution sites, realized that our schools were going to stop providing free meals over spring break last year, which was unacceptable. And so alerted city staff, worked with city staff, actually wound up managing our school meal preparation in the kitchen that week to make sure that kids got fed, because hunger doesn't stop for spring break.
Thank you very much. Apologize for that. Delegate Mark Levine is next, and Delegate Kate Corey is on deck.
Thank you. COVID has been devastating throughout the 45th. It's been devastating, particularly to the people in need. We found that the Latin community, in fact, has probably suffered the hardest, although certainly all people who have economic troubles have been in trouble. So they've been essential workers, people have been crowded. What have we done? We've done a lot. We have made sure that people got the testing they needed. And originally the testing wasn't always going to the right areas. We worked on that. We also worked on nursing homes, people who, that's where the pandemic first hit hard. We wanted to make sure that they were covered and being taken care of. We worked to get vaccinations to everyone, regardless of need. And again, sometimes the people who don't ask for it are the ones who need it most. We work to get unemployment aid. That's something we still do every day, very difficult with the Virginia Employment Commission to make sure those folks are covered. We work to help people find doctors and healthcare when they needed it, to make sure that they could find a place to live if they needed it. We've done full service since COVID, and even unfortunately attended memorials for those who died.
Thank you very much. Next is Delegate Kate Corey with Holly Hazard on deck. Is that right?
Thank you. There's so much to say in such a short time. I want to mention one issue, one part of the our safety net that doesn't really exist and was laid bare by this COVID emergency, and that is criminal justice reform. That is how incarcerated people are treated. I've been working very hard on the healthcare for incarcerated women. Particularly this year, we have had serious health problems in our prisons, and I've been able to make a difference for women. I've also been working in the community. Community leadership is not only being elected. My campaign and I have been over to the community mosque, handing out meals, over 1,000 a day, showing how we care, how we're involved. We're not special because we're elected. We're members of the community. We reach out to our neighbors.
Thank you very much. Holly Hazard is next with Delegate Ken Plum on deck.
Thank you. I, at the beginning of the COVID crisis, became a Virginia Medical Corps volunteer to help with the clinics and also with some of the testing facilities. I've to date volunteered at 4 clinics, one of them a 12-hour day out at the government center. And I see firsthand the inequities in vaccine distribution, try as we might to make it equitable. Immigrants, regardless of what we may say or the comfort we may give them, are fearful to come and get a shot. I've had firsthand experience with this with immigrants that I know. So the next time we need to really roll out a program that gives recent immigrants confidence that they're coming for a shot and that they're not going to be otherwise detained. In Culmore, which is a neighborhood of recent immigrants in my community, families already were struggling to put food on the table. And then with COVID, when all kinds of work shut down, there was no chance for many of those families to get any kind of government assistance, unlike many of us or many of our neighbors. And so any issues of food instability at that time became more serious. And I will stop there.
Thank you very much. Delegate Ken Plum with Mary Barthelson on deck.
Thank you. In terms of COVID, the impact could not have been greater, larger than we anticipated. But the thing it pointed out to us is that we need to do some things beyond just the health concerns in terms of how we organize our health services. We had some deficiencies as we tried to work at the state level, we worked at the local level, and that disjointed effort caused some delay in our early efforts to respond to COVID. But even more significant than that has been what happens to people who are unemployed because of COVID. Our Virginia Employment Commission simply has not been able to weather the storm. It had a 10-time increase in claims for unemployment compensation and has not been able to deliver. My staff works, and my staff as my one assistant, works essentially full-time to make sure that people who've been unemployed with the COVID experience will in fact be able to get their unemployment compensation provisions to them. So it's an eye-opener for us, in as devastating as it has been, but there are lessons that we can learn from it as to how we can improve the delivery of government services.
Thank you very much. And next we have Mary Barthelson with Delegate Kathleen Murphy on deck.
Last year, when I was working with our essential workers to keep them protected, I heard a lot of stories about companies that were not allowing their workers to wear protective gear. So some people chose to leave. There was a lot of anxiety and confusion at that time about where to get resources. We had a lot of people lose their jobs, lose their businesses that couldn't pay rent because the money didn't get out fast enough. I heard from many of my constituents that the VEC told them that they were not going to pay them for work previously done. So I think we've got a little bit of an accountability and transparency issue with our institutions that we have to address. I think it's really important that we bring back the penny for affordable housing and make sure that we keep creating opportunities in education and employment to improve equity so that in the future, we don't run into the same challenges that we have seen in the last year.
Thank you very much. Next is Delegate Kathleen Murphy with Jennifer Deli on deck. You're still muted. You're still muted, Kathleen. Delegate Murphy, there we go. I'll restart your time.
Thank you. COVID has fundamentally changed everything, the way we work, the way we interact, how our kids go to school. It seems like it's insurmountable. It has crippled small businesses, and it has pushed people to the wall. I mean, they don't know how they're going to pay for things. We have spent an awful lot of time coordinating federal, state, and local with our local officials and our congresswoman to make sure that the people in our district get the help they need. At first, it was getting vaccinated, and now it's getting help to survive financially. The House Democratic majority is committed to getting kids back in school. I think that's our number one issue as we move forward, because what we do up here in Northern Virginia isn't necessarily going to be good across the entire Commonwealth. So we're all working together, and we're trying very hard to make sure that people get what they need to survive this.
Thank you very much. Jennifer Deli is next.
Thank you so much. So in the 34th district, for those of you that are familiar, it ranges from extreme wealth in areas like McLean and Great Falls to lower income immigrant communities like you find in Sterling and across the Loudoun County border. So likewise, the COVID impacts were very disparate as well. I know there were families in the 34th district that actually benefited during this time because the stock market went up or their housing prices went up. They bought second homes, they spent time with their families. And there were folks in other parts of the district that absolutely struggled. While I was out knocking doors early on in those districts, people were not vaccinated, and I would go to other parts of the district and they were, and we're still seeing that today, even when I was knocking doors today. So in order to fix that going forward, we need to fix those structural inequities that we had at the beginning of COVID. We have to address things like home health care, sick pay, paid days off, paid leave for families, supporting women. We know that the jobs lost net are women. And so we need to get women back to work, and we need to support them in this recovery.
Thank you very much. And I will remind everyone, once you finish speaking, make sure that you go ahead and mute yourselves so we don't get any feedback. Thank you. So question 3, the first speaker will be Delegate Ken Plum, followed on deck by Mary Barthelson. Climate change is an existential threat to our species. Addressing this crisis is critical. What policy priorities should the Virginia General Assembly have to combat climate change? Specifically, how will you work to support our local initiatives?
Thank you very much for that question, Shomali. And certainly that legislation will come to the committee that I chair, and I expect us to take immediate action. The idea that we can wait until 2050, for example, to get rid of fossil fuels and clean up our environment is simply not true. We have to move those deadlines up to 2030, 2035 at the latest. Transportation is one of the big items that feeds the depletion of our ozone layer and has effect of raising temperature. We can do differently by having alternative forms of transportation. We took some action on that this year, but we need to go even further. Beyond that, then, too, we need to take the steps necessary to increase solar. Virginia now is 4th among the states of the nation in solar availability, and we need to move that even higher. So I look forward to continuing to work. I have had the highest awards from all the conservation committees over the years that I've been in the legislature, and I'm not going to turn away from my effort on protecting the environment.
Thank you. So Mary Barthelson is next with Holly Hazard on deck.
I think prioritizing decarbonizing Virginia is a really important effort, and I would like to move down that time frame from 2045. If you paid attention to the bills that were going through the General Assembly for green technology this year, you may have seen that an electric car standard almost didn't pass because it was confused with a car emissions standard. So our green energy groups had to go in there and explain the bills again to the legislators to make sure that we could get them passed. So I think with my background, I actually understand the challenges with these bills. I understand the challenges that California and Texas have run into, and I know how to explain the bills to the legislators as they're presented, and I can communicate them to the public to make sure that no bill gets pushed down the line because the legislators are confused about it.
Thank you very much. Next is Holly Hazard with Delegate Kay Corey on deck.
Thank you so much. This actually is one of my priority issues, and I agree. I use the word existential threat when I'm talking about this. We need to take, I believe, every dollar of our $170 billion biannual budget and run it through a filter, both for climate change and also for equity issues. And every single decision that we make, we should say, is this better or worse for the environment? The second thing we need to do is we need to get Dominion out of the pockets of legislators. They give to legislators directly, but they also give to legislators indirectly, perhaps through other legislators or other means. We need to push the pro-environment or pro-taxpayer legislation that's lauded by legislators and gets both good press, but Dominion is keeping an estimated $2 billion that they owe us. Give that money back to us, and we could do a lot to combat climate change, lower all of our energy bills, and buy our own buses.
Great, thank you very much. Delegate Kay Corey with Delegate Mark Levine on deck. Delegate Corey, we can't hear you. There we go, perfect.
I'm now unmuted.
I'm resetting your time. Go ahead and start.
Thank you. Yes, we are in a climate emergency, and there are a number of ways that we should attack it all at the same time. One is business development, encouraging business development that is renewable energy and energy efficient. I just had a bill passed that sets up green banks, which allows localities to offer low-cost loans and create public-private partnerships to stimulate that sort of business. The other way that we should be attacking the climate problem is by helping the low income meet their utility bills and live in a more energy efficient structure. I passed a program this year that will allow people who are at 150% of poverty to have their utility bills capped at 10% of their annual income. We're the second state in the country to do that. That will help thousands of Virginians, and I am extremely proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Delegate Mark Levine with Elizabeth Bennett Parker on deck.
So dealing with climate change requires an all hands on deck strategy. We need more offshore wind. We need to ban any new fossil fuel infrastructure. We need geothermal. We need hydroelectric. We need to not only increase solar, but as we've done, allow folks who get solar to distribute it back to the grid. Allow options for both buying and renting. You asked about local initiatives. We in Alexandria actually had 3 so-called 100-year floods last year. They're supposed to occur once in 100 years. We had 3 of them. That's the effect of climate change. So what I did last year was I organized a study that we're going to have on inland flooding, because we've studied coastal flooding, which certainly matters to our folks in Norfolk, but inland flooding matters up here, and also local initiatives. We gave Alexandria and other localities, including Fairfax, the power to use their own monies to help people avoid flooding through all kinds of ways to have homeowners redirect the waters and so forth. Done a lot on this.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Bennett Parker with Delegate Alfonso Lopez on deck.
Thank you. So on City Council, I sponsored a resolution declaring climate change an emergency and believe that we need to continue to act like it is and to accelerate our just and equitable transition to 100% renewable energy that leaves no workers and no communities behind. On City Council, we passed an environmental action plan committing to additional reductions in our greenhouse gas emissions, but we're not going to be able to meet those goals without additional action at the state level. When renewing our green building policy, I made an amendment to ensure that all of our future public buildings in the city will be net zero in carbon emissions. But again, we need additional action at the state level, both with respect to transportation and with respect to buildings and other things. So with transportation, we need to continue to increase our investments in public transportation. We know that VRE, for example, takes one lane of traffic off of both I-66 and I-395. And by increasing and enhancing investments in rail and bus and other forms of transportation, we're going to continue to do that. And we do also need to ban corporate contributions from utilities like Dominion.
Great, thank you very much. And next is Delegate Alfonso Lopez with Karishma Mehta on deck.
Thank you. I've been working in the trenches on environmental policy and legislative transactions at the federal level for years. I was the founder of the Virginia Environment and Renewable Energy Caucus. I have the highest A+ rating by LCV over the last decade. That's shared by one other individual. I was the 2020 Sierra Club Legislator of the Year, the 2021 Chesapeake Bay Foundation Virginia Legislator of the Year. I agree that we need to do much more in terms of infrastructure for environmental or for electric vehicles. I also agree with Ken Plum. We need to move up the deadlines to at least 2030, 2035. We need to do much more in terms of energy efficiency and LEED buildings. I'm also proud of the fact that my Solar Freedom Bill passed, and I was the chief co-patron of the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which took us from one of the worst states in America for climate change to one of the best. I'm also a Green New Deal champion, and I look forward to working on these issues for years to come.
Thank you very much. Next is Karishma Mehta with Delegate Ibrahim Samaira on deck.
Thank you so much for this question. As a preschool teacher and educator, this is why I got into this race, to protect the future and the planet for my students, to ensure that they have a habitable planet. When it comes to our energy system, we have to listen to science. And science is telling us that we have until 2030, 2035 at the latest to get to 100% clean renewable energy. The recent VCEA gets us to 100% renewables by 2050. My goal is to pass a Green New Deal and center Black and Brown communities that have been hardest hit by environmental injustice. It means we need a delegate who will fight for a pipeline moratorium, just transition for fossil fuel workers with a repeal of right to work to guarantee high-paying union jobs, and we can get there faster by banning fossil fuel subsidies without giving huge breaks to Dominion and Appalachian Power. When my opponent had a chance to vote against those wasteful giveaways, he stood with monopolies and took money from Dominion and Appalachian Power during his career. I'm the only candidate in this race rejecting fossil fuel money, and it's why Sunrise Movement, Food and Water Watch are endorsing my campaign as another Green New Deal champion in this race.
Thank you very much. Next is Delegate Ibrahim Samaira with Jennifer Adeli on deck.
The climate crisis has been here. It's been here for a very long time, and we've had a lot of time to deal with it. Half measures and small ideas are not going to solve the problem. That's what mostly we've been doing. So when the Virginia Clean Economy Act came up for a vote, I refused to support it because it's not what scientists are telling us we need. As somebody who's going to live on this planet for a very long time to come, I'm making sure that this planet is as safe and as sound for everybody, not just for those that are privileged, to have solutions to the climate change problem, to the climate crisis problem. Co-patron the authentically Virginian Green New Deal, and that's the type of bill that I would support regularly. I think we need a moratorium on all fossil fuel projects. I think there are solutions in geothermal and wind, but the best projects exist are those that don't have anything to do with Dominion Energy. Dominion Energy's bottom line is one that wants to make profits, not solve the climate crisis that we have at hand right now. And a lot of the solutions that we've had before the General Assembly have had to include Dominion Energy as part of the solution. I refuse to allow them. I don't take their money, and I encourage all my colleagues to not do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Jennifer Adeli with Delegate Kathleen Murphy on deck.
Thank you so much. So as you've heard from a lot of people tonight, Dominion Energy is the #1 factor in Virginia that is suppressing our ability to move climate change forward. I have vowed from day one to never take money from Dominion Energy, and the incumbent in this race has and has not said she won't in the future. In addition to that, we need to change how Dominion Energy is incentivized. In 2015, we passed a rate freeze legislation that Delegate Murphy supported and voted for that made it so that as rates go down with technology, our rates stay the same. Consumers pay the same price even as energy gets cheaper. We need to repeal that. That vote was wrong. We need to change this going forward. On the local level, we can do a lot to impact climate change locally, including things like bike paths, supporting the work from home community, and other things like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Delegate Kathleen Murphy.
I'd just like to respond. We have all said that we will no longer take money from Dominion. Certainly Dominion donated to all of our campaigns at one time, and there was a point at which we decided we would not take money from Dominion, and we do not. So she can pretend like that's true, but it isn't. I am a member of the Environmental and Renewable Energy Caucus in the House of Delegates. We have worked to protect the environment and put Virginia on a path to renewables. We want to hold corporations accountable for pollution. We want to formally recognize the need to guarantee access to clean air and clean water. Over half of Virginia's greenhouse gas emissions come from our transportation sector, and I'm proud to have been a co-patron this year of the Clean Cars Bill and of Delegate Bill that established an electric vehicle incentive program. I've been working on environmental issues for a very long time, and it started when I worked with former Vice President Al Gore. So this isn't a new issue for me, and it's an issue I'm dedicated to. And none of the environmental legislation that we passed this year would be possible without the Democratic majority in the House and the Senate.
Thank you very much. Moving on to question 4. Holly Hazard will be the first person on this, and then Delegate Kay Corey on deck. Fairfax County residents want a government that works. How will you collaborate with your colleagues in Richmond, as well as our local Board of Supervisors and school board members to ensure effective government?
Thank you, Shamali. I appreciate that. I think that there is a bit of a discord many times between our legislators in Richmond and in Fairfax County. I think the biggest area where there should be overlap, and sometimes there's overlap, some of there isn't, is in the area of education. And I think that Virginia, frankly, is failing here. Students can't afford our great university system, and the legislature has abandoned it. But for for educators in Fairfax, teacher salaries are 32nd in the nation, and we've got a teacher shortage. I'm sure you've all heard of over 1,000 unfilled positions. We have standardized tests that are not developing curiosity and thirst for knowledge, but are driving many classrooms to just rote memorization. And it's damaging for kids, particularly at the lower levels. We should be working with our local governments to bring the curiosity and the spark back to education, particularly in the lower levels, and working with Fairfax County to coordinate that.
Thank you very much. Delegate Kay Corey with Delegate Ken Plum on deck.
Thank you. As a former school board member in Fairfax County, I am well aware of the challenges and time and collaboration that is required in local government. However, effective government is actually in the eyes of the beholder. So I'd really have to talk to people to find out exactly what they mean. I think one of the things that we are working on in Richmond right now, and it's also coming in my committee, is change the local tax structure. Localities need to be able to move from the emphasis on land property taxes. That has skewed Fairfax County's ability to zone properly and give enough money to education. And as the chair of cities, counties, and towns, I am in a good position to work with the Board of Supervisors to see how we can become more effective and transparent.
Thank you very much. Delegate Ken Plum is next with Mary Barthelson on deck.
Virginia is a Dillon rule state, which means that localities have the power given to them by the state. Fortunately, over the years, Virginia has seen fit to grant a charter to Fairfax County that gives us much more liberties to do its work than having to go to Richmond to get approval on every movement forward. That new charter has made a whole lot of difference because the fact of the matter is the resources available in Fairfax County, one of the richest and wealthiest communities in the country, are greater than those available generally throughout the state. We need to be able to have the freedom to move forward, and the adoption of that charter has allowed that to happen. At the same time, we need to recognize that we don't solve our problems by running off to Richmond to get them to change the rules, but we solve our problem by working in a collaborative relationship with local government for the benefit of our citizens.
Thank you very much. Mary Barthelson is next with Delegate Kathleen Murphy on deck.
Well, I would work with our local government as well as the state, making sure that we are improving all of our processes, using data-driven methods to make sure that we're doing everything as efficiently as possible. I think we still have some accountability and transparency issues, which I really think should be a priority, given that we've seen the challenges that they presented during the pandemic. So that's definitely something that I will prioritize as House Delegate.
Thank you very much. And next is Delegate Kathleen Murphy with Jennifer Adeli on deck.
Thank you. I work very hard to make sure that we coordinate our efforts with the federal, state, and local officials, especially work well with Senator Barbara Favola and our supervisor, John Faust, and of course, our member of Congress, Jennifer Wexton. We all work hard together to meet the needs of our community and to ensure constituents and citizens that live in the Commonwealth can get the services that they need. And that's what we need to do, across the board effectively. And we've been moving forward in this position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jennifer Adeli is next with Delegate Ibrahim Samaira on deck.
Thank you so much for that question. Yes, it's absolutely important that the General Assembly and the local Board of Supervisors work hand in hand. I'm proud to say that I was appointed by Supervisor John Faust to the Community Services Board for Fairfax and Falls Church, where I serve as the fiscal chair for a $200 million budget. What we see in the Community Services Board delivering mental health services, services for the developmental disability community, and drug treatment services is that what comes down from Richmond is often essentially an unfunded mandate. And a lot of that, for example, came with STEP Virginia legislation that was passed a few years ago. We're just now starting to get funding for that, even though some of those deadlines have already come and passed. So it's very important that the General Assembly has that tight relationship to understand what's going on locally and how that buckles up to Richmond, and then especially vice versa, as Richmond passes laws, how they're going to be implemented in the real world, like I have implemented in the real world in federal agencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next is Delegate Ibrahim Samaira with Karishma Mehta on deck.
Thank you for the question. It's so important for several issues. I think in the middle of the pandemic, the biggest issue was coordinating on vaccination efforts, getting vaccine sites in the local areas, going to the areas that have not received the vaccines because they are disenfranchised communities and getting it to them. I'm proud to have worked with the Board of Supervisors to do just that in my Herndon community, as well as this in Sterling as well, which I represent. And I'm happy to be endorsed also by a Board of Supervisors, Vice Chair of Board of Supervisors in Loudoun County, Karan Sains, who represents my district as well. There's so much to collaborate on, specifically on affordable housing. There's a growing shortage across Northern Virginia that I've talked about briefly earlier. 174,000 units short. In Northern Virginia is very hard by the fact that we don't have enough new affordable housing construction, especially in the desirable neighborhoods that need it the most. And the key culprit of that lack of new affordable housing is exclusionary zoning that acts as a ban on higher density housing types. I work closely with my Board of Supervisors to try to educate them on this issue because at the end of the day, things are not good on zoning. We have big problems on that front, and I'm ready to give them all the tools that they need from Richmond through the Dillon Rule.
Thank you very much.
Much more. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Karishma Mehta is next with Delegate Alfonso Lopez on deck.
Thank you so much for this question. As an educator and a community organizer, I know that collaboration is key to thriving communities and to ensure that we can pass universal legislation that helps working families. I'm proud to be taking a strong coalition of progressive community leaders at NDPAC that fight for the Arab American community, Bases for Progress that fight for the South Asian community, and our partners at Sunrise Movement and so many other organizations that are on the ground working for working class people. As a legislator, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox. We need to put pressure on senators and people in the General Assembly who won't ensure their constituents' basic human rights, and by fighting alongside local allies in our government and community who understand the critical nature of passing good legislation. I recognize I'll be working with many people I don't disagree with, but I always will stay open-minded and work alongside local elected officials and school board members so that we can get things done for working class people. My district knows that I'll put people first and work with everyone to get things done. Thank you.
Next is Delegate Alfonso Lopez with Delegate Mark Levine on deck.
Thank you. As the former head of congressional and intergovernmental affairs for Virginia during the Kennedy administration, I'm very practiced in working to bring different levels of government, local, state, federal, together to get things accomplished. I've worked very well with Jeff McKay, Penny Gross, Ricardo Anderson, and also, more importantly, in some cases, with the government relations head, Claudia Arco, for Fairfax County. One issue that actually bubbled up this past session, residents of the 49th District had been deeply concerned for quite some time about a number of violent crimes and late night disturbances that had taken place at one business that was authorized to serve alcohol. The Virginia ABC had revoked the establishment's liquor license on more than one occasion, but then restored the license without community input after a short time period, which was a big concern for folks in the 49th District. I worked with Arlington County, local civic associations, and the state to draft and get passed and enacted legislation that would improve local oversight for nuisance businesses and other properties that pose a threat to the safety and security of residents. Additionally, the bill expanded the definition of criminal blight to include repeated violations of state laws that pose a threat to individuals or private property. That's an example in near term about how we got stuff done working together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Delegate Mark Levine is next with Elizabeth Bennett Parker on deck.
Thank you. I strongly believe in listening to the voices of local government. And in fact, I remember a bill where the Fairfax County Board supported proffers, basically requiring a developer to, if they wanted to build, to give something back to the local government. Fairfax was trying to convince a lot of people. They didn't convince everybody, but I was convinced. I fought for it. In fact, if you look at the hundreds of votes I've cast over the past 6 years, I think there's only one where I didn't try to relax the Dillon Rule to give local governments power. That one was I wanted to prevent the school or prison pipeline. So that's the exception on the rule. But Alexandria, Arlington, I've been there for local governments time and time again. In fact, in Arlington, by getting rid of Jefferson Davis Highway, I set a standard for all local governments, allowing local governments the power to change their roads. Folks didn't know they had that power. I wrote a memo to give them that power that has been used statewide. Collaborative relationships, I've had them with my colleagues. I've had them across the aisle, even on some difficult bills. I've worked with Republicans, and that's why the Speaker of the House with my colleagues and so many of my colleagues have endorsed my candidacy because of my collaborative relationships.
Thank you very much. Finally, Elizabeth Bennett Parker.
Thank you. I've worked effectively and collaboratively with colleagues and elected officials across the region. First, on my own city council, the budget amendment I mentioned earlier, I got unanimous support for. That's just one example. As currently the chair of the Virginia Railway Express, I work with local elected officials across 9 jurisdictions. On the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission and Regional Commission, I work with elected officials across the region as well. With one of my colleagues in the city of Falls Church, we've started a group for elected women across the region, and we get together to talk about the issues affecting our jurisdiction, how we can work collaboratively as a region, and how we can also support each other as women. I think coming out of that, we actually came up with a regional campaign around wearing masks at the very beginning of COVID, for example. I think, again, that the fact that I've shown that I can effectively collaborate with others is the reasons that I've been endorsed by State Senator Adam Ebbin, Supervisor Dan Stork, and so many others across the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask for a moment for clarification. I didn't lose audio, but I see a note in the chat that says Delegate Murphy's video and audio froze on the last question. Can I get some clarification from Jack Corrali or Brian on whether we need to have a few seconds to restate?
Her audio was kind of garbled a little bit at the end. It was slow just from the connection, but I feel like we heard most of her answer. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion.
All right. I saw a head nod from Delegate Murphy. Are you comfortable with that? Is that okay?
I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. So then we'll move on to question number 5. And it will start with Delegate Mark Levine. Elizabeth Bennett Parker will be on deck. This past year has highlighted inequities in our society. One critical area was in housing. Affordable housing and utilities, as well as preventing evictions, became a priority. What policies would you support to address the affordable housing crisis and prevent evictions in Fairfax County and throughout Virginia?
It has been a difficult year, and it has been a priority. And one of the things we've done in the General Assembly, we've done several things actually. In addition to the moratorium on evictions, which we extended, we actually allowed a payment program back, because after all, when someone can't afford to pay back their rent, it's hard for the renter, it's hard for the landlord as well. Some of them are struggling as well. So these payment programs allow them to be fully paid, but make sure that people don't get evicted. Affordable housing, though, is much larger than the pandemic. The pandemic just illustrated it at its worst. And there's a lot we can do. I've worked very hard to increase the funds for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund we now have millions of dollars for. We didn't used to have any when Delegate Lopez first proposed it. But we've also had, frankly, helping affordable housing requires more wages, right? It's not just the housing stock. It requires raising the minimum wage and paid family medical leave and making sure that tipped wage people get wages as well. It requires unions so that people can collectively bargain and get better wages. It's a bigger question than just the housing stock. I also mentioned the proffer problem, the way that we've been trying to get developers to set aside a certain amount for affordable housing. It's a big issue. We're getting to it, solve it, but there's a lot more we can do.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we have Elizabeth Bennett Parker with Delegate Alfonso Lopez on deck.
Thank you. Yes, affordable housing was a crisis in Northern Virginia before COVID, and we've only seen that exacerbated since. We need more funding, we need stronger tenant protections, and we need more help for evictions, not just in Alexandria. We've had an eviction task force that's brought together nonprofit leaders, city government, and others to help folks actually access the resources that are out there, because we all know that government forms can be very confusing. And if you don't know the resources are there, you don't know how to fill out the forms. It asks for so much information. You need folks in the community working directly with folks that are already coming for food or coming for other resources to help make sure that the word is getting out about these programs, and that we have the staffing, the technology, and the funding to support them.
Great, thank you very much. Delegate Alfonso Lopez with Karishma Mehta on deck.
Thank you. I'm very proud to have been a 2020 Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Regional Champion. My legislation in 2013 created the Virginia Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We were able to capitalize it at just $6 to $8 million, and we fought every year to increase it. I'm incredibly proud of the fact that we now have an Affordable Housing Trust Fund that's $125.7 million on top of the $524 million we got under the CARES Act at the federal level. So what does that mean? That means that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was used as a backstop for the rental and mortgage assistance programs that we did over the summer. And then also the Virginia Affordable Housing Tax Credit that we just passed this session, combined with what we've done in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and what we're going to be doing with the tax credit, we are in a very good position to get rid of the eviction crisis that we've had in the Commonwealth. I'm also very excited about the fact that I voted, only me to say also that I voted against the Amazon deal originally because of the affordable housing aspect and helped lead the fight on the floor about that specific issue. Affordable housing is very important to me. It's very important to my family and my community, and we need to keep doing everything we can to make it stronger.
Thank you very much. Karishma Mehta and Delegate Ibrahim Samaira is on deck.
Thank you so much for this question. This is a deeply personal issue to me. I believe that housing is a human right, not a commodity that should be sold off to the highest bidder. And like many families in the 49th district that I've spoken to personally, I was displaced just a few months ago from my apartment in the pandemic because we don't have a representative fighting for a rent moratorium and universal rent control. In fact, my opponent took almost $8,000 from real estate developers and PACs that also donate to Republicans in Virginia. And although I go door to door and the number one issue is housing, that is not what we have seen with the current representation. So we can house tenants in Virginia without giving so many of our funds to the developers in this region. We need to house people in units that are already built, not give our hard-earned taxpayer money to luxury developers that continue to displace the working class and make it impossible for us to guarantee housing as a human right.
Hi, Madam Moderator.
Great.
Just in response to that.
I don't recall her actually calling out your name on that one. Clarification on that?
The delegate from the district.
So I'm going to ask Jack Curali or Brian to clarify. I was just told if the person was called out by name. Is that sufficient? Would you like a response?
You're asking Jack or myself?
Jack or Brian?
It seems like Jack's fine. I mean, it was mentioned that the delegate takes money from certain companies, whatever. If he has a quick response, we've already spent enough time on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
I'll give you 30 seconds.
Two things. That I've taken any money from Republicans. I was the Virginia Young Democrat of the Year and arguably one of the strongest, most staunch Democrats in Virginia in recent years. And I'm sorry, I've never taken a dime from it or given a dime to a Republican or taken a dime from a Republican. Also, in terms of developer money, the fact is that when people are donating to me, they're buying into my agenda, not the other way around.
Thank you very much. Apologies for that. All right, so Delegate Ibrahim Samaira and Jennifer Adeli is on deck.
Affordable housing has been an issue that's been often ignored by politicians on both sides of the aisle. The economic consensus is clear that where you live down to the exact neighborhood and block often determines your social and economic outcomes. That's because housing not only decides your health and stability, but your physical access to good jobs, quality schools, healthy food options, public transit, and other crucial services. It is for this reason that racial and economic segregation presents generational disadvantages to communities across Virginia. Spoke briefly about exclusionary zoning. Exclusionary zoning is what leads us to have missing middle homes, which are proven to be less expensive, better for the environment, and more accessible to marginalized communities. What I've done with bipartisan support from my colleagues is promote public transit-oriented quality affordable housing, establish a working group on accessory dwellings, which will potentially open up tens of thousands of affordable housing units. And my vision for the future is allowing local governments to build and rent out social housing units that are insured to be low rent and high quality, increasing the funding for housing, which assists affordable housing projects all across, which would assist housing projects all across the Commonwealth. There's so much more to do. There's no one silver bullet, but we need to strike at the core of modern day redlining, which is what's causing this lack of quality affordable housing for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I picked up the wrong color for you there at the end. Jennifer Adeli and Delegate Kathleen Murphy is on deck.
So much. So one of the things about affordable housing is that it's not just for low income families. Middle income families struggle with housing costs in Northern Virginia from our extremely high rates that we pay here. So some of the things that we need to do is to address housing costs for middle income. And by middle income, I mean firefighters, teachers, service workers, you name it. I know so many teachers that teach my own children that they live multiple counties away. They drive for an hour to get to work every day because they can't afford to live close to where they work. One of the things that we could do, for example, is that DC has something called a homestead deduction. And if you own a home and you're owner occupied and you live in it, you get a deduction on the first many thousands of dollars of property taxes against that property. We don't have that in Virginia. Something like that would encourage home ownership, and it would really help that middle housing income market and encourage more families to be able to buy their first home.
Great, thank you very much. Next is Delegate Kathleen Murphy with Mary Barthelson on deck.
Thank you. I've actually worked on this issue for quite a while and sponsored a bill to create a low-income housing tax credit and to create a affordable housing trust fund. This moves slowly, I have to be honest. But this year we did have a House version that was patroned by Jeff Bourne that he and I both got together and wrote. And Senator Locke carried the Senate version, which passed. And we were really thrilled that that happened. So the affordable housing tax credit and the low-income housing tax credit are something that I've been involved in and working on for quite a while and will continue to do so.
Thank you very much, Mary Barthelson, and with Delegate Ken Plum on deck.
I signed the pledge to bring back Penny for affordable housing. I've been a renter myself. I've also been a landlord. I think that we need to make more policies to incentivize home ownership as well. I think we can also ease some housing restrictions to make it easier to rent spaces that are already available, especially around public transportation and universities. We're dealing with the housing shortage right now, so costs have gone up a lot. But I think by continuing to expand housing, we can keep that stable to make sure that everyone's taxes don't go up, the elderly don't get pushed out, and to make sure that we are responsible city planners and we avoid some of the other areas that we've seen that failed to maintain appropriate housing levels, which created a huge spike in homelessness and crime.
Thank you very much. And next is Delegate Ken Plum with Holly Hazard on deck.
We need to be careful that in solving our housing problem, we don't force people out of Fairfax County because we don't pay enough and we don't have enough affordable housing, and they have to go off hours away in order to be able to find a place to live, filling our streets then and roads, coming to work every day. What we need to do not only is to improve our housing funding, and as a member of the Appropriations Committee, you can count on my vote to be able to do that. And secondly, as a chairman of the Joint Legislative Audit Review Commission, we're taking a look as to whether or not we're getting an equitable return on our housing dollars. And I think we'll pick up some money there. But beyond that, we need to improve the wages of our teachers and our firemen and our policemen. We need to look at, celebrate the $9.50 we went to on May 1, but recognize that is not close to a living wage. If you simply trued up the minimum wage to what it was when it was introduced, it was already be at $11, which is what the bill that I had introduced would have done. So we need to go back to the legislature and recognize that one reason we have a housing problem is we don't have people with enough money to be able to afford housing, and we need to improve a lot of the workers as well as housing stock.
Thank you very much. Next is Holly Hazard with Delegate Kay Corey on deck.
Thank you so much. Well, I'd like to say what they said, but I realize that in this discussion that probably isn't going to sail very well. But there've been no bad ideas here in terms of dealing with a very intractable problem. One of the challenges that we have, particularly in the 38, but I understand in other districts, is that we've had the skyrocketing real estate prices with COVID, and then we've got so much area that's already been developed that we're really dealing with infill in terms of building more housing stock, which is tough for everyone, certainly exacerbated by people who are struggling to make their payments. I think that one thing I can add to this discussion is that we need more flexibility in zoning so that we can, if a community agrees to it and a locality wants to build more than one house in residential areas, the idea that tiny home phenomena or building in-law suites or in-law housing could be particularly helpful in a dense area such as ours, so that we've got a little more flexibility and those teachers and firemen can live in the same communities that we do without breaking the bank. And finally, I just want to say that such as the trust fund, that we need to have money to help with a safety net, because when we make the bad decision that we're going to evict somebody, that our society is going to evict somebody, we end up with issues that are just exacerbated in terms of homelessness and then losing jobs and kids who are in stable areas. So
thank you. Your time is long expired. Thank you very much. Delegate Kay Corey.
Thank you. Our current affordable housing crisis is reflective of many other existing inequities that are contributing to crisis in our society. These things were made more stark by the COVID situation. We need to attack it from at least two different directions. One is dealing with the current housing stock, and the other is looking at how we got where we are. And zoning is a big problem. Zoning, however, is a totally local power. Unfortunately, all we can do at the state level is encourage the localities to be responsive in their zoning decisions. I think we need to step back and look at how zoning is administered and created across the state, and not just zoning for property, but look at school boundaries. We have many lines that we draw in the sand that prevent people from access to vital surfaces, and especially school boundaries are a problem. Not allowing the students who do need it the most have access to academic excellence.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We're down to our final question, and we'll be starting with Delegate Alfonso Lopez with Karishma Mehta on deck. I would like to give you an opportunity, We'd like to give you an opportunity to share any final thoughts and let voters know how they can learn more about your campaign. So Delegate Lopez.
I'm proud to be endorsed by dozens of elected officials, including Senators Tim Kaine and Mark Warner, Congressman Don Beyer, Jerry Connolly, Governor Ralph Northam, Speaker Eileen Filicorn, Bernie Sanders for President Co-Chair Elizabeth Guzman, and dozens of mainstream organizations, including the Virginia Education Association, firefighters, the National Organization of Women, the Sierra Club, and every labor union that's endorsed. They know I will continue to be a tireless champion for our values. My name is Alfonso Lopez. I'm running for the House of Delegates to help build a better future for my kids and my family, and for you and your families. I ask for your support and vote on Election Day. Together, let's continue building a Virginia that lifts everyone up and leaves no one behind. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I want to thank everybody and let you know that you can get involved with my campaign at www.alfonsolopez.org. We are doing a bang-up job with the campaign, and I hope everyone has a good night tonight.
Thank you very much. Karishma Mehta with Delegate Ibrahim Sumaira on deck.
Thank you so much. My opponent says that corporations and developers are buying into his agenda. Well, they aren't buying into mine, and there's a reason for that. It's because I'm on the side of working people in the 49th district, on the side of renters and those people who are struggling to own a home, start a family, or pay the bills. I'm on the side of Black and Brown communities demanding real justice and an end to police violence in their community, and women who deserve equal pay for equal work. Our campaign belongs to working people, not corporations, and it's why I will never take a penny of special interest money. It's why I've been endorsed by Sunrise Movement, Our Revolution, the National Women's Political Caucus, and Progressive Democrats of America, among many more. We know that it'll take a movement to transform Virginia. That's why I'm asking you to get involved, to stay involved, to take back power for working people. For those in the 49th, I hope to earn your support through early voting and on June 8th. Please visit karishmaforvirginia.com to learn more. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next is Delegate Ibrahim Samira with Jennifer Adeli on deck.
Thank you, Shamli. Thank you, FCDC, for putting on a wonderful conversation today. Running for re-election, I've been representing this district that's wonderfully diverse and special to my heart for the last two and a half years. Proudly representing it, progressing and delivering on healthcare as a human right, quality housing for all, making wages more livable, protecting labor and small business, ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment, environmental justice for all, abolishing the death penalty, and a healthy democracy. And there's so much more to deliver on. I'm not done and nowhere near. We have systemic changes that need to happen. And I'm proud to be endorsed by a large swath of elected officials and organizations that are ready to work with me on it. Whether it be delivering on Medicare priced public health insurance option or paving the way for a universal single payer healthcare system in Virginia, and comprehensively ensuring reproductive healthcare, or abolishing the school to prison pipeline, or banning weapons of war from civilians and police, banning private prisons and local cooperation with ICE, promoting municipally owned broadband access. And there's so much more that needs to be done for Virginians so that we can catch ourselves up with the time and much more in the future. Thank you so much. And I ask for your vote.
Thank you so much. Jennifer Adeli with Delegate Kathleen Murphy on deck.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to use this opportunity in this last question, sort of an open question, to bring up a topic that we didn't get asked about, and that's about repealing right to work. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this term, this is a set of laws that basically says that it's to suppress the ability of unions to organize. And it means that you can work for a company even if the workforce is unionized, and you can kind of free ride off of all the hard work that they've done to get labor rights, pay, healthcare, safety, and all those things. I wholeheartedly support repealing right to work. And I was a little bit surprised that we didn't hear about it, so I wanted to bring it up. So you can go on my website at jenniferadeli.com to see more about my position on repealing right to work. You can learn more about my position on repealing mandatory minimums, criminal justice reform, women's issues, post-COVID recovery, and more. We didn't have a lot of time, even though it's been almost 2 hours. So I thank you so much for your attention. And again, I ask for your vote for the 34th District on June 8th or early, starting now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Delegate Kathleen Murphy with Delegate Ken Plum on deck.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I am very proud to have represented the 34th District for the last 7 years and to have turned this district from red to blue. We work really hard every single day to make sure the issues that are important to the people of this community are met, are paid attention to, especially things like the transportation problems that we all know are one big pain in the 34th District. I'm proud to be endorsed by labor unions, by our legislative leaders, by our member of Congress, and by so many others. And I'm proud to have received the votes from so many of you over the years. And you know that I do the hard work to make this district count and to make this district a blue district. So I hope you'll stand with me. I hope I'll get your support. And I want to thank you for all you've done through the years to help me be a good delegate.
Thank you very much. Delegate Ken Plum with Mary Barthelson on deck.
Thank you, Smiley, and also thanks to FCDC for the opportunity to have this conversation tonight. You know, I've been around a long time. That's a well-known fact. But what I want to assure you of is that I'm working for the future, not the past. I do know about the past, and that gives me vital information in moving forward. When you talk to people about who's the most liberal members of the state legislature, they're bound to list me near the top. I've been working on blue issues throughout my career, and we're now making amazing progress. As I indicated earlier, the last 2 years have been amazing progress, and I want to bring the energy, the enthusiasm and the knowledge that I have to further those causes in the future. I've been around a long time, but make no mistake, haven't lost any of my enthusiasm, haven't lost any of my energy, haven't lost any of my efforts to be able to serve the people of the 36th district in the way in which they so aptly deserve. Thank you for being here tonight. Look forward to your help. kenplum.com. You can find out more about me, and you can also find out how to donate to me. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much. Mary Barthelson with Holly Hazard on deck.
As an engineer, I learned how to utilize data to design the best solutions to problems. Policymaking is becoming increasingly data-driven, which means we need policymakers who understand it. My education and my work experience has prepared me to serve the community that I've called home my entire life, whether that be on education issues, green technology, criminal justice reform, you name it. If you want to find out more about my policies, you can go to barthelsonforvirginia.com, which also has my social media accounts on there if you want to check them out.
Thank you very much. Holly Hazard with Delegate Kay Corey on deck.
Thanks again. And finally, I very much appreciate this opportunity. Look, there are no bad choices here. I am proud to be among such caring and committed candidates, including my opponent. After the last catastrophic presidency and the destructiveness of COVID, Virginia has an opportunity to rebuild and reboot and reimagine. And that includes taking stock of what's worked for us in the past and what hasn't, to take on issues of equity, climate change, rebuilding our businesses and our lives with passion and care. We need leaders who are more than a reliable vote. We need leaders who want transformational change, not tweaking systems to get back to where we were. That's not good enough. We need leaders to commit to rebuilding that's also inclusive, visionary, and kind. I have a record as that kind of a leader. If you like what you hear, please join us at hollyhazard.org to volunteer, donate, of course, and of course, to vote. I do ask for your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Delegate Kay Corey with Delegate Mark Levine on deck.
Thank you. I'd like to thank FCDC for putting this forum together. I know it wasn't easy to bring all these different people to one place at one time, and it's a great opportunity for all of us. I would like, of course, your vote. I would like your support in many other ways, but I want you to know that campaigning now is not just campaigning. For me, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to learn more about my community, learn more about what the people in my communities care about, and to work to help them solve those problems. I have found this a great community organizing opportunity, and there are several different groups that I've been able to activate to work on common problems. If you would like to join my campaign, you will find that there are opportunities to be a student intern and to learn community organizing techniques and to help your neighbors solve their problems together. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Delegate Mark Levine with Elizabeth Bennett Parker on deck.
Thank you, Shamali. Thank you, FCDC, for hosting today. I think a lot of people in Fairfax know me. Maybe some of you don't. I'm trying to introduce myself to all of Virginia. I want to tell you what people say about me. My constituents say about me, that I'm always listening, that I'm always there, that Mark's monthly meetups are well attended, that we come every month to talk with you. Those are the kinds of things I want to bring. I'm transparent, I'm accessible. I listen to you because you often have the best ideas. They will tell you that I'm tenacious about the battles that I fight for, that I don't give up, that I keep fighting. Some of the bills that I've been putting forward, whether it's gay rights or police body cameras or protection for survivors of domestic violence, that took us 5 years to get. I brought to Fairfax County 24/7 support for sexual assault nurse examiners, something I did with Senator Barbara Favola, who's endorsed my campaign, and so many have, from the Speaker of the House all the way down to many of my delegate colleagues. I would appreciate your support. My website is levineforvirginia.com. Come see what I can do for you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And finally, Elizabeth Bennett Parker.
Thank you. And thank you to the FCDC and to organizing and to everyone for attending tonight. I have unique experience and perspective to bring to Richmond, given my background as a local elected official, nonprofit leader, and small business creator. We need to build an economy that works for all of us, especially as we focus on Virginia's recovery from COVID, and that includes passing paid family and medical leave for all of our workers. We need to ensure equitable educational opportunities, including accessible, quality, early childhood education starting at birth, not only to set our children up for success, but to support working families and to enable women to stay in the workforce. We've seen so many women forced out of the workforce during COVID, and we know that those hurt most during this session have been women of color. We need leaders in Richmond who can work collaboratively to help us rebuild Virginia better after this pandemic, and will focus on the needs of women, of people of color, and of communities too often left underserved. I actually knock doors outside of campaign season to talk to residents who don't necessarily have the time to come to a public hearing or engage with us normally. And I organize volunteer with the vice mayor events to meet residents while also giving back to our community. I hope you'll join State Senator Adam Evans, Supervisor Dan Stork, former delegates Marion Van Lanningham and Rob Kopeka and others in voting for me on June 8th. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate everyone coming to attend and all of you for participating. Honestly, I am so proud to be a Fairfax County Democrat. This field of candidates is absolutely amazing. So thank you all for a spirited and engaging discussion of topics that have been important to voters here in Fairfax County. I wish you all the best in your campaigns and remind voters that early voting has already started. You can vote early at 3 locations in Fairfax County: the main Fairfax County Government Center, the North County Government Center, and the Mount Vernon Government Center. You can do that now or at your regular polling site on June 8th. Please go to fairfaxdemocrats.org for more information. Thank you all for attending. Thank you and good night.